I'm not on. Sorry. Welcome to the Plan and Zoning Commission meeting. I'll read the rules and procedures. The Planning Zoning Commission is generally an advisory body to the City Council. The City Council will hold a public hearing and make the final decision on all matters before the Commission, other than the site plans and subdivision plats, unless denials or conditional approvals thereof are appealed. Please contact the City Clerk or Development Services Department staff for details on council hearings. The applicant will be given 10 minutes to present the request. Proponents and then opponents from the public are then allowed to speak in that order, with each speaker allowed a maximum of 5 minutes. The applicant is then allowed 5 minutes for a rebuttal. The hearing will then be closed and the Commission will discuss and vote on the issue. All comments are to be germane to the item under consideration, and speakers are to maintain a courteous manner. Items listed on the consent portion of the agenda will not be individually discussed and will be considered for approval in accordance with the recommendation in the staff report, unless an individual present or a member of the Commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately under the public hearing agenda. The City of Des Moines is pleased to provide accommodations to individuals or groups with disabilities and encourages participation in city government. Assistive listening devices are available for meetings in the MSC boardroom. To better serve you, when possible, please notify us at least 3 business days in advance at 515-283-4209, should special accommodations be required. Plan and Zoning Commission meetings are broadcast live on Mediacom Government Access Channel 7 or Channel 777 for customers with that local cable service, or online through the YouTube application at the following internet link: youtube.com/City of Des Moines, Iowa. And we have a quorum this evening. So is there a motion to approve the minutes from the August 5th meeting?
I'll move.
All in favor, raise your right hand. And are there any abstentions? Thank you. Okay, I'll read the items on the consent agenda. Item number 1 is a request from Hy-Vee for review and approval of the following for property located at 2540 East Euclid Avenue. A, determination as to whether the requested rezoning is in conformance with Plan DSM. B, rezone property from MX3 Mixed Use District to CX Mixed Use District to bring the existing large format retail sales use into a zoning district that is more in line with the intent of the zoning ordinance for the use including but not limited to accessory outdoor sales with kiosk and canopy for vehicular pickup of online purchases. Is there anyone in the audience who would like this item pulled from the consent agenda and discussed this evening? Any commissioners? If not, this will remain on consent. Item number 2 is a request from Deborah Dard for review and approval for Type 2 design alternative for property located at 2908 53rd Street to allow construction of a 320 square foot detached garage in the rear yard that would be within 2 feet of the south side property line where a 5-foot minimum setback is required. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to have this item pulled and discussed on the public agenda? Any commissioners? Okay, item 2 will remain on consent. Item number 3 is a request from McKee Auto Center for review and approval of the following for property at 4131 and 4141 East 14th Street. A is determination whether it's in conformance with Plan DSM. B is an amendment to Plan DSM to revise the future land use classification for the property from community mixed use to industrial. and C is rezone property from MX3B Mixed-Use District and I1B Industrial District to I1 Industrial District to remove the prohibitions on vehicle sales and trucking and transportation terminal uses, and to allow major vehicle maintenance repair uses. So anyone in the audience like item number 3 pulled from the consent agenda? And any commissioners? Okay, item 3 remains. Item number 4 is a request from Oakview Terrace for review and approval of a public hearing site plan Oakview Terrace Type 2 Design Alternative for property located at 3201 30th Street to waive the required undergrounding of the utility service line to the northwestern building. Anyone from the public that would like to have this item pulled from consent? Okay, so item number 4 will remain. And so we don't have any other items for consent. So items number 1, 2, and 3, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with items 1, 2, and 3?
I'll move.
Thank you, Jan. Everybody in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, unanimous. So before we continue to the public hearing items, item number 5 has requested a continuance to the September 2nd meeting. I'll read that one, and that's a request from Best Food Mart for Type 2 design alternative and denied Type 1 design alternatives on property located at 4028 East 14th Street to allow expansion of a commercial cottage building type for retail sales, limited use, and fueling station. Is there anyone here that wishes to have this item heard this evening? Anyone on the commission? If not, is there a motion to move the continuance of item number 5 to the September 2nd meeting?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Everyone in favor, please raise your right hand. All right, that one will move. So now we do have items number 2, right?
Number 4.
4, excuse me, I just crossed that off. It's item number 4. We'll start with that item. Request from Oakview Terrace for property for Type 2 design alternative for property at 3201 30th Street. And, all right, Bert.
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, Bert Drost, planning staff for the city. First, I'd like to wish the chair a happy birthday today.
Thank
She's
you.
gracing us on her birthday. That's kind of her. So item number 4 is a request for a site plan at 3201 30th Street. They're requesting waiver of the requirement to underground utilities located at the northwest corner of the building. The subject property is an apartment complex located on the east side of 30th Street, kind of in between Douglas Avenue to the north and Hickman Road to the south. It's on a steep hill if you're familiar with this area. Here is the site plan. They're wanting to, or they've requested waiver of the burial of utilities here at the northwest corner of the building. And here's a photo that shows that line right here. The applicant has provided estimates from Mid-American that shows the new, where the burial of this would cost approximately $80,000 to $100,000. So staff does see that as a practical difficulty for them. So we have our support of the request. Again, as I mentioned in the staff report, we laid out the estimates. Again, it was the applicant's cost estimate was $80,000 to $100,000 for construction and utility installation. So we felt that that was a high cost for the project. So we have recommended approval of the public hearing site plan, as well as approval of the Type 2 design alternative to waive the required undergrounding of utilities. We did not receive any comment cards back or any communications from any of the neighbors. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Thank you. So is the applicant here to present?
Good evening, Doug Saltzcaver, Engineering Resource Group, 2413 Grand Avenue, Des Moines. Civil engineer on the project. All those costs that Bert was just talking about are not specifically to Mid-American Energy, only a small part of it, because this building is many decades old. And for Mid-American Energy's requirements, we'd have to set a new transformer, which they classify this as a new service. The meters, electric meters, are currently inside the building, which are not now allowed with a new service. Those would have to be moved outside. And since each unit is individually metered so that the tenant pays electricity, that means a new wire will need to be run from each meter into each unit. And then when you get into the unit, the existing breaker box is not meeting current code, so that would have to be replaced. There's also some asbestos-containing materials in the building, so when all of this wiring is being done, those materials would have to be removed and properly disposed of. And because potential airborne asbestos, all the tenants would have to be removed and relocated. So, and because some of the tenants currently have leases that last well into the future, the owner would have to buy out those leases and relocate those tenants. And construction duration is estimated probably 3 to 4 months with getting all the different trades in and out and everything taken care of. So that's the reason for why all of this is so expensive, to underground what appears to be a relatively short length of wire from the pole to the building. With that, I'll answer any questions you may have.
So, describe to me the improvements that are being done to the building that are triggering all of this.
There are no improvements being done to that building. The building to the south of this was caught on fire. I think it's been determined to be arson. That was heavily smoke and water damage. That entire building is being rehabbed inside. And because of that, new wiring has to be done, so that one is compliant with undergrounding. We're putting in a new transformer for that building. And then we were here a month or so ago asking for waiver of not the services into that building, but the primary lines that run through the site. And that was granted. However, I misunderstood staff's write-up. They were talking about one building and that needed to have the services undergrounded, and I was thinking that was the fire damaged building. Turned out it was not. They were wanting the subject building here tonight, the one that no improvements are being done. They wanted the utilities undergrounded to that. So that's why we're back here tonight.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no more questions? Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak in support of this request? And then please write down your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
Awesome. Hi, my name's Carol Maher. Many of you may know me as from online because I always talk about biking. But I biked out today to this site, and 30th Street is pretty scary on a bike, but thank you to, sir, to your property for installing two bike racks at the four buildings. I was wondering if you might consider upping that up to have a bike rack at each building, which would be great. And there's really bad disrepair on the driveway that goes up to building M that could swallow sort of a mini or maybe a VW bug. Might consider that. Also, there's a serious water leak in the parking lot in front of building N. That's got to be either costing the owner money, at least using a precious resource to sort of water the parking lot, that I hope that the building owner will address with the city. That's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in support? Anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in opposition to this request? Okay, does the commission have any further questions for city staff this time? If not, we'll give the applicant time for rebuttal if they would like. Okay, then we will close the public hearing and the commission will deliberate on the item. Okay, there's a motion. Is there any further discussion? If not, those in favor of approving staff, raise your right hand. Okay, that's unanimous. We'll go on now to item number 6.
Right. Madam Chair, members of the Commission, Board Ross Planning Staff for the City of Des Moines. Item number 6 is a request for a site plan located at 2266 Hubble Avenue. It would allow for expansion of an existing tire repair business. They are requesting 4 Type 2 design alternatives tonight. So here's the aerial map. You can see that there's an existing auto repair business on the property here. It's a unique site in that it's kind of surrounded on 3 sides by streets. We have Hubble Avenue here on the east and south, and then Cyril Street to the west. They're proposing an addition to the north side of the building here. As you'll see from the photos I'm about to show you, that the existing building fronts Hubble Avenue. So this is looking at that corner there of Hubble Avenue and Cyril Street. You can see the existing building here. This is the back side of the building from Cyril. And then this is looking head-on from Hubble Avenue. So you can see the existing building here. They would improve that building and then put an addition onto the north side here. And you can also see this existing fence here. That is the subject of one of their appeals, or one of their design alternatives. Since they are required to bring the site into full compliance, they would lose legal non-conforming rights to this existing fence that it was installed legally about 12 years ago, but we no longer allow this type of a fence within a front yard area under the new code. So here's the site plan that they're proposing. North is to your, I guess, to the upper right corner. So Hubble Avenue is across the bottom here. So you can see the existing building right here, and then the proposed addition. So the 4 design alternatives that they're requesting, one is that fence that's within the front yard area. The new ordinance doesn't allow for any chain link fences in the front yards of commercial properties. The second design alternative is to allow this overhead door to be added to the street-facing facade. And staff, I'll just say now, staff is supportive of that design alternative because there really is no other option on this property. Since if it was on the, if they put the overhead door on the back side, then it would be facing residential properties. So we do feel that having it face Hubble Avenue is the better alternative. The third design alternative is they're asking for waiver of the transparency requirement along the front facade. They're required to have 65% of the facade measured between 2 feet and 10 feet, or 2 feet and 8 feet. They need to have 65% of that open. But given the nature of their business with overhead doors and whatnot, they're not able to meet that. And staff is also supportive of that design alternative. But then their last design alternative is to have, be able to use vinyl as a primary material, both on the front facade and on the facades facing south and to the west. And staff is not supportive of that design alternative to allow the vinyl. But this elevation right here, if you see the cursor, this is the best design, or the best elevation of the front that would face Hubble Avenue. You can see the new addition is this taller portion, would have one large overhead door, and then the existing building would have a new door put on, and then this glass storefront. So they're not meeting that 65% transparency, but we do feel that they're making a good attempt by having that storefront here. So the staff recommendation, again, they've asked for 4 design alternatives. The first is for the transparency requirement. We've recommended approval of that. The second is to allow vinyl as a primary material. We've recommended denial of that one. And the third is to allow retention of the fence, and we've recommended denial of that one as well. And then the fourth is to have that overhead door facing Hubble Avenue, and staff has recommended approval of that one. As you saw earlier in my presentation, we did not receive any comment cards back or any communications from any of the neighbors. So, did anyone have any questions for me?
The agenda says the use of vinyl siding, but the drawings say cement board siding?
I'm sorry, I missed the last part of it.
The drawings say cement board siding, not vinyl siding?
Yeah, they're wanting to use vinyl here.
Okay. The packet information I had
Okay.
cement board. So is it?
Yeah, yeah. I guess it was the vinyl, since the Cyril facade is a front facade, or the west facade facing Cyril is considered a front.
Okay, go down to drawing 4.
Right.
There it says new fiber cement
here.
board there, and then on the drawing below. So is it vinyl or is it cement board?
Okay. Yeah, I'll ask the applicant to clear that up. But
Okay, thank you.
we were under the understanding from their appeal that they did want to use vinyl for this. It's a good question. Any other questions?
Thank you, Bertha. Is the applicant here to present this evening? Please come forward, state your name and address, and you'll have 10 minutes to present.
My name is John Collins. I'm the owner of the business. I live on 305 Kenyon Avenue. The fence, that's the only thing, the siding's no big deal to me. I can put the hardy plank on there if that's what they want. The other garage is vinyl siding, so it would match the other garage, and then the main building is brick. The fence part, you know, that fence has been there. It's transparency. It's a see-through fence. Anywhere you stand, you can have any view of anything. And the crime rate over there is real bad. So even when I had a fire, I had another garage where this one's going, and it burned all the way down. So I was going to make it bigger. I built it like 13 years ago or something. So I just need bigger for storage and stuff. When the fence burnt down, there's a wood privacy fence there. They came in, broke into my shop. It's just a deterrent of that fence being there. And there's 3 lots there, and it only goes on the 2 lots. And then that 3rd lot on the corner there, it has no fence there. So it wouldn't be blocking no turning or nothing on that road. And besides that, that's all I got to say about it.
So I'm sorry, I couldn't hear quite. You were in agreement to not use vinyl siding, or?
I would like to use vinyl siding,
Okay,
but I wouldn't want that to hang it up. If they need the other siding, that's fine. You know, I would really like to keep that fence though, just for my customers' purposes and people stealing stuff. Anything that's outside that fence gets ran through, sacked. The fence just deters people from messing with stuff, you know, and that's all I have to say about it. Any questions?
Go ahead.
Have you, when staff said you can't use this fence, did you go and find alternatives and find costs of actually putting in an alternative fence?
The way I've understood it, they just didn't want no fence there. They want me to tear that fence down. That fence was there before I even bought the place. Then on my, I've had it for 13 years. On my last site plan, they approved to keep it. Then now on this, with the site plan I'm having drawn up, they don't want it.
Is there a way to clarify, is it that there is desire to have no fence or desire to have not a chain link fence?
Our desire is to have no fence there, or no fence over 3 feet in height, at least. Like, we would support like an ornamental decorative fence, but I don't think that would do him, wouldn't serve the purposes he's wanting a fence for. But our ordinance would allow a 3-foot tall fence in the front yard.
Is there an option that staff had identified if the crime rate is verifiable? What would be the city's recommendation
I missed
to help?
the middle part of that.
If the crime issue that has been identified is verifiable, what is the city's response to being able to provide protection on the site?
Well, it's probably not a good one, but we would say that there's other ways to provide security, like video cameras or sensors, light detector, or more lighting, things like that.
Any other questions for Bert or the applicant? If not, is there anybody else here to speak in support of the request? Or if you're done, okay. Anyone else that wishes to speak in support? Is there anyone here who wishes to speak against this request? Okay, at this point, do we have any more questions for city staff at this time? Applicant has nothing to rebut, so we will then close.
Can I ask one more question?
Okay, go ahead.
Of the other properties in this neighborhood, it seems, and I apologize for not being familiar as much about this, but it seems like there are similar businesses that have similar security measures. How different is this, or would this be different relative to the other businesses? Like, especially if you're going east down Garfield, or if you're going other areas, don't we have other businesses in there with fences?
I don't know. I know down here these trucks are part of Anderson Erickson's, and I don't see a fence around those.
To be fair, they do have a big walled complex, so all their valuable stuff seems to be behind the castle walls down there. Would it be possible to give them an opportunity to take a look at other fence options that may be more in keeping with the objectives of the ordinance, as opposed to saying no fence at all?
I mean, I think staff's recommendation would still be no fence, but you could certainly entertain, like, if they used a decorative wrought iron fence, that was something a little more durable or attractive than the existing fence. Or if it had better posts, or, I mean, those are things that the commission could recommend.
The only reason I push this, and I apologize, I'm not convinced on the argument that there is unavoidable crime in that area. At the same time, if that is a verifiable item, it does seem you have access to compromising his ability to make a living if we're saying there's no fence of any sort. I guess that would be the one thing I guess I would hope we would consider more, that there may be a business impact here if that is a verifiable point.
Yeah. Like I said, we do allow a 3-foot tall decorative fence within a front yard of a commercial property.
But even I
Fence.
can jump a 3-foot fence.
Right. Fencing is in our landscape standard section of Chapter 135 of the Planning and Design Ordinance, which means everything in there is eligible for a Type 1 design alternative. So if there ever was a situation where staff felt that a taller fence was warranted, staff would have the ability to grant it administratively, but I don't foresee a situation where we would be supportive of that.
Any other questions for Bert? Okay. If not, we'll close the public hearing, and commissioners, what's time to discuss or have other thoughts?
I guess I would say, Dory, I'm not that concerned about the fence. I think there are other alternatives for security. So I would just say that.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I'm not convinced that this fence is preventing crime anyway. I could climb that, and I'm not particularly tall or athletic. So.
I think you're athletic. I would move staff.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion to approve staff? All right. Those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. And those opposed, the same? And
Can I just abstain?
one abstention. Okay. So now we're ready for the final item, is item number 7, and Frank is going to present.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. My name is Frank Dunn-Young. I'm planner with the City of Des Moines. The item I'll be presenting on pertains to renovation of an existing Burger King restaurant where they are looking to do facade improvements and add an additional drive-through lane. Part of the waiver request include a waiver of the requirement to underground existing utility lines along Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway and along Hickman Road. The second request is allowance of a drive-through facility on the front facade of the building when limited to an interior side or rear facade. The final request for waiver is waiver of streetscape requirements requiring full pavement from pedestrian walk through the curb with planters along both frontages. And let's see. And the site, as it sits today, to the north of the site is an existing Quick Trip convenience store. Northeast of the site, adjacent to the property, is an existing auto zone, and there is a to the east directly is a motorcycle repair shop, and then to the south directly is I believe that's auto repair as well, and then to the west directly is a locksmith shop. And so as we're seeing, this is the view of the property, of the drive-through where the intended expansion is to occur for the drive-through. There would be double lanes that would be proposed. A portion of the power poles that are in question are visible to the right of the screen with the line that extends across that frontage. This is a closer image of that. This is part of the front facade that work will be taking place. And this is the drive-through side, which is the north side of the building facade, which faces Hickman Road. I will scroll and expand the visual of the landscape plan to provide some context for what's being asked. Staff is, my apologies, let me scroll up. And so as you can see, the drive-through that's being presented is the additional lane along this front. And then they are looking at doing the landscape improvements associated with that. There would be screening fence. They are proposing pedestrian walk from the facility out to Martin Luther King Parkway. Their proposal initially along the frontage was to do cutouts with the tree planters and provide some segments of additional walk so they could get the appropriate clearances. In talking with traffic and transportation, they were looking for a 4-foot minimum clearance of trees along that frontage, really making it impractical to have trees within the standard 2.5 feet of the curb line. And so part of the acceptance along that frontage is to get those street trees backside of sidewalk and leave the sidewalk intact as it is to provide those clearances for traffic. Along the Hickman Road frontage, the staff is asking for the Class A sidewalk with from curb through the planters with a 6-foot walk with the tree planters installed. The reason being is this doesn't have the same restrictions that traffic is looking for the clear zone. It is a heavily traveled area in terms of pedestrian movement and bus stop activity. A part of the consideration for this area is the undergrounding of the utilities, and there are 2 poles on each frontage. Now, there's a pole, you can't see it in this image, but there is a pole right in this location that extends across Hickman Road, and that is more of a transmission line. There is a line that extends between these two to a light pole that is roughly in this area. Along Martin Luther King, there's 2 poles as well. There's a pole in this location. There's a pole in this location. And the ask, and they have a line that extends across to MLK. Mid-American Energy has provided a rough estimate of what the cost of that work would be. They're looking at the cost at approximately $75,000 to complete that work. The budget for the renovation is approximately in the range of around $300,000, as the applicant had provided some documentation associated with that. And so staff is recommending approval of a type 2 alternative to allow the pull, the very pull to the very west on Hickman, that the line that travels north towards Quick Trip, to allow that to be retained and maintained. Staff is recommending denial of the type 2 to allow the overhead line that feeds the eastern street light from that pole along Hickman Road. So it would head east, that line. Staff would like to see that underground. Staff is recommending denial of the type 2 alternative for not having to underground the overhead line along MLK. Staff believes that line should be underground. That would create the opportunity along both frontages to have clearances for some of the overhead story trees along those frontages, both Hickman and MLK. Otherwise, if you had power lines there, you'd be restricted to using understory trees within 30 feet of those power lines. Staff is recommending approval of the request for type 2 to allow a drive-through on the front facade of the building. To relocate that would be impractical. It would require them to relocate the back of house kitchen. It would have impacts to grades, to the parking situation. So it really wasn't feasible in our minds. Staff is recommending denial of the request to waive the streetscape requirement along Hickman Road. Staff believes that the streetscape should be installed in accordance with the requirement. That's all I have.
Any questions for Frank?
Question. The estimate from Mid-American of $75,000, was that for all of the electrical undergrounding or just for the items that you were recommending approval on?
Correct. That estimate was for all of the undergrounding. I did reach back out to Mid-American, and we discussed what the cost would be, and it's in the range of about half of that 75,000. On the short notice, they weren't able to give me a finite estimate, but they said it would be approximately in the range of 35,000 to 40,000.
Any other questions? If not, thank you, Frank. We'll have the applicant present. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you. My name is David York. I'm here on behalf of Tasty King, the franchisee of the Burger King in question. I'd like to thank you all for your time this evening, letting us present and consider the remodel that we're proposing. It was unknown to me when I came in, but I would also like to offer the chair a best happy birthday wishes.
Thank you.
And we'll try to get you out of here as soon as we can.
Okay.
So I'd like to start by highlighting some of the advantages to what we're overall proposing. Adding the dual lane drive-through will increase our ability to service customers through the drive-through lane, thereby decreasing traffic on site and on Hickman and on MLK. We think that's a benefit to the community, certainly a benefit to us. Thank you so much. One moment, please. Down a little more. Is up one? Am I free to do that too?
Yes, sir.
Oh, thank you. So here's our overall plan as a reminder. So the proposal of the dual lane here, we do believe is a benefit to the community as well as us, servicing more customers and relieving traffic congestion. We think that adding the pedestrian path of travel from MLK is in alignment with the city's desire to make this a pedestrian corridor. Right now, there is no real pedestrian access to the site. We think that this upgrade, again, while an expense to us, is a good improvement to the site and to the community. We also think that the significant amount of landscaping that we are adding through discussions with staff, both screening the drive-through and out along the perimeter of both Hickman and MLK, is another significant community improvement. But I think the biggest improvement that we're going to see is in the exterior of the building. We have an old building with a rather dated look in a rather dated looking area of town. And we think here at this major corner, increasing or improving the exterior facade may spur additional development, may spur additional remodels to help bring the overall appearance of the neighborhood up. And we think this would be a great start to do that. Tasty King has already, before we came to the council, before we came to planning, said this site has opportunity for us. If we invest in it, it will return a profit for us. For the dollars that we invest, we'll see something back. We've done a fair amount of analysis. We've looked at a lot of options, and we felt like the amount of money that we could put into it, both in terms of the exterior, the drive-through, and some deferred maintenance at about $300,000, would return the right investment to us. We've also agreed through discussion with staff and through planning that yes, we need to up that budget some and improve some of the exterior access points, adding the pedestrian path, adding the additional landscaping. But we are just concerned from a financial standpoint about adding the underground or undergrounding the utilities that are along Hickman and along MLK. In a minute, I'll introduce Mark Gifhorn. He's the Director of Construction for Tasty King, and he'll talk a little more about the financial aspects and what we're looking at with this store in particular. The other point I'd like to make on the staff recommendation about improving the streetscape along Hickman. One of the points they raised was that there's bus stops along Hickman, and putting the sidewalk right at the curb supports those bus stops. While I'm in agreement in theory that that is accurate, a review of the site indicates that the bus stops are on the other side of the street and the other side of our driveway here on Hickman. None of the bus stops are along the stretch of street where we're proposing moving the sidewalk. Leaving the sidewalk where it is very consistent with the sidewalk on the other side of the street and the other side of the driveway. And we think for just community consistency, it makes sense to leave that sidewalk in place. With that, I would like to ask Mark Gifhorn to come up and talk a little bit about the financial aspects of the project.
And You will have 5 minutes to speak.
Pardon me?
You will have 5 minutes to speak.
Okay. This won't take long. Don't want to keep you any longer, but the big concern we have is we've allocated, budgeted a certain amount of funds for this project. We've kept it close to that with all the enhancements that we're doing. With the additional work that staff is asking, it will take us over 20% of the original cost. At that, I don't know that we're able to do the project, and we may be walking away from it, simply for the fact we won't get a return on the investment. So it's cut and dry for us that we want the building upgraded. We want to be a good partner in the area, but we cannot feasibly, financially, spend the additional funds. Any questions? Yes.
What's the breakdown of the 20%? As I understand, the numbers are identified. You're sitting at about 10% for undergrounding from across MLK. My understanding is it's those single lines going from one side of MLK to those lights. Is that the correct undergrounding? And is that a 10% overrun on that?
That's 10% if it's half of the 70, and then the sidewalk.
This is just the sidewalk along Hickman, that is another 10%, so 35,000 for the sidewalk along Hickman?
Yes.
I guess I have a clarification. So of the staff recommendations, I know that you've addressed the underground. Okay. Do you agree with all the others?
With the landscaping?
Yeah.
I would have to bid that out and see where because we did put funds in for the landscaping. I would have to see what the additional landscaping would take us to.
Okay.
And there's some flexibility, a little flexibility on that. Again, we want to work with the city, but we have financial accountabilities as well.
Okay, so again, sorry for clarification. So if A1 through 3, B and B are accepted and C is denied with respect to their recommendations, you're saying that your cost overrun is only 10% now? So if C, which is the sidewalk stuff.
Yes.
If that is actually, that waiver is approved, you're saying your cost overrun is only 10%?
For the underground cables?
Correct.
Yes. And then we're looking at the landscaping upgrade and that additional cost there that I would have to look at and have bid out.
I'm sorry for being slow. I'm not understanding the additional landscaping piece here. So I'm seeing A1 says, they're saying recommending approval for A1, which means you get to leave the pole in the far northwest. A2, A3, as I understand them, are two light poles that are on the west side of MLK that have like one string across MLK. You have to bury across MLK, which gets you to $35,000. B says they're approving your request for the design alternative to allow the drive-through. Awesome. Yes. C, as I'm understanding, says right now that denial is going to cost you $35,000. Am I understanding that C costs $35,000?
May I interject?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I'm cool to ask anyone.
My apologies. In terms of the costs, it's actually over 10% for the lights and a little bit under 10%. We're estimating it's $25,000 to do the sidewalk work and $37,000, roughly half of the 75 originally proposed, to do the underground work.
And I apologize, I was listening to two things at once. Can you give me one more time? The cost of C is what?
$25,000.
$25,000 for C.
Yes.
And that's $25,000 to pave that section of MLK, with the argument being for bus stops, but the bus stops are west of your site? Is that
West
the
and
argument?
north, yes, correct. It's removal of the existing sidewalk, repair of the area that isn't getting any pavement, and then new 6-foot pavement along Hickman for that entire run.
Okay.
Would we be able to see the picture again of the area of the sidewalk?
Oh, a picture of it? My apologies. I was
Yes, a
thinking-
photo of what it looks like right now. Thank you.
How about this? So this shows the existing context along Hickman from the corner as it would travel going west.
The bus stops sort of match kind of a last photo.
Yep, the bus stop is
Yeah.
Right there.
right there. So that's that utility line that comes across. And that's
Give it-
the utility line that we were asking to be underground. So we would propose to maintain that one, and that's,
If the pole remains, would the sidewalk modification asked for actually go through the pole?
the way the streetscape requirement would work is you would have essentially imagine from curb to 12 foot towards private property. All of that would be paved. You would have your tree planters 2.5 feet from that curb, which they would be adjusted to maintain the spacing needed. You'd need at least 15-foot separation from that overstory tree, from that pole, from that planter. And so the planters would be 5 by 15 along the frontages. And so then the sidewalk itself would be then 6 feet after those planters. So what we typically tell people is you have a 1 foot, 1 foot of concrete, you have a 5-foot planter, then you have a 6-foot sidewalk is what your standard streetscape would look like.
Has traffic weighed in on impacts of having more I guess I have two questions, sorry. Is there an expectation that a bus stop would be moving closer to this intersection given how busy it is? Like, is there any chance a bus stop would go in there, number one? Number two, is there any concern with the intersection with having more trees along that road there?
Streetscape is a requirement that we hold throughout the city. When we have instances where there is, whether it's a vision clearance issue or whether it's a DOT clear zone or a traffic clear zone, they are receiving the site plan submittals for review of that criteria and will provide us feedback. This is one of those instances where they provided us with the feedback along MLK, hence we are agreeing that the existing concrete walk would remain, and then as an alternate, we would still get the street trees, they would just be backside of that sidewalk towards existing private property. And so I know you had one more question with that.
Oh no, that was both of them, I merged them, sorry.
Any other questions at this time? And do we have any other speakers to speak in support? If in support of the project?
Hi, my name is Carol Maher. I live at 701 Polk Boulevard in Des Moines. Thank you, Mr. Frank and Mr. Mark, for investing in the neighborhood and updating your building in at that intersection. As you mentioned, it's needed. I'm hoping that when you do the investments, that you take the time to clean up some of the, and that the commission would be interested in talking to them about cleaning up the old light footings that have been left behind. There's at least 3 on the site, as well as the new monument sign that's going in. I hope that when they take down the existing sign, they consider taking down the footing as well, so that doesn't remain like the 3 light footings have remained. And also, if you look closely at the pedestrian, the new pedestrian cut through there, it cuts right through the drive-through. And while there are truncated domes for the pedestrians to know that they're going down, I didn't see on the plan anything that indicated the drivers knew that pedestrians were coming across there. I hope that you would perhaps talk to them about considering signage or paint or maybe a raised sidewalk or something, so that the drivers that have just ordered and are looking for their money know that there's people going to be coming across, because there's a new frontage buffer fence. It doesn't indicate, at least I couldn't see how tall that buffer fence was. And I just hope there's enough line of sight that the guys coming off MLK running to get their Whopper don't get hit by the cars ordering Whoppers. And that's all that I wanted to say for you guys to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who wishes to speak in support? Do we have any members of the audience who wish to speak in opposition to the request? If not, the applicant, I don't know if you wish to speak to any of the other comments that have been made.
Thank you. I'd like to clarify one and then just alleviate concerns on the others. For the drivers going through the drive-through, we're more than willing and happy to put a sign in front of the crosswalk, which makes sense, alerting them to watch for pedestrians. That's a relatively easy and appropriate thing to do, and we'd be happy to consent to that. Regarding the old light pole bases, they will either be removed, I think most of them are too, and one will be reused as another light pole. The light pole that was on it came down, we want to put that back up. So we will clean those items up. Just to clarify, I know that there is a note on the landscape plan that notes new monument sign. That is in error. There is no new monument sign proposed, given the remodel that we're doing, the fact that we're not changing the use of the property, the fact that it will remain in operation and will not cease operation for 6 months, and we're not changing the building footprint. Per code, we're allowed to keep the existing pylon sign, and we plan to do that. I think I addressed everything you brought up. I'm not sure, maybe not to your liking, but I think I did cover all your points. We will remove any unused. Yes.
Okay. Any other questions at this time? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For your time.
And I did have, before we close the public hearing, a question on city staff. If that monument sign is not in place, is that acceptable to the city?
The requirement for a monument sign upgrade isn't currently being met. So they're not required to upgrade. They aren't, there hasn't been a change of use, a 6 months lapse in use, or those 2 criteria. There's a third one. 6 months.
Oh, that's
Change of use. It hasn't been met. Oh, expansion by more than 50%. Sorry. It took me a minute to think about that. Those 3 criteria have not been met, so it's not triggered at this point.
Right. Thank you.
Dory, I had a question for city staff. We've had this request before from other applicants about the underground. And I can't remember what our precedent has been, you know, what decision we made. And I'm wondering if city staff can remind us.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'd like to be consistent
Sure.
if possible.
Well, I guess we look at each one on a case by case, so we don't really like to say we set precedents. I guess we've tried to be consistent though with how we've made this recommendation. We feel that, you know, keeping some of the poles is appropriate, but we do feel there's other locations where it's appropriate to bury. So I feel like we're being consistent on recognizing if the cost, if it's exorbitant, and trying to be reasonable.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing, and commissioners, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm somewhat sympathetic to the applicant's request for the denial. Is my microphone on? Oh,
Just press the,
should be on. Now? Oh, there we go. I'm sympathetic to the applicant's request for the not allowing them to bury the underground, the power wires, especially since we've already approved one earlier in the session, taking into consideration, and I think we need to have flexibility about that and financial cost, and I understand that although it is a franchisor, it's not Burger King and Mid-American, we waived the requirement for them earlier. I just think it'd be consistent to take it, the entire financial package. We do want to encourage development in that neighborhood. So that's my opinion.
okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Okay,
I tend to agree. I think they're doing a really good job of improving the property for pedestrians and car drivers, and hopefully bikers. So I'm with you on that, because I think this is an improvement from what it is right now, and I don't want to discourage those types of improvements when it's going to be financially burdensome to do things like this.
Well, so I guess I'm very curious on the financial burdensome piece, because if we're looking at this, we're looking at A1, 2, and 3. A1, 2, and 3 look at about a 12% cost overrun. The one that we approved earlier was at least a 15% cost overrun. I don't know where those boundaries are, but we're also talking about a wire that's across MLK that is down from time to time. I think Google Earth even had it down. So having the ones going across MLK grounded seems like that makes sense from both a safety and practicality perspective. The C is the one that I guess I'm not completely convinced is one that, I guess I'm not entirely sure that I agree with the denial of the C item. That's one where that sidewalk is working. That is when you walk through there, that is a busy intersection with things going quick anyway. I don't know if I'd want to be closer. I understand we're going to have a barrier that's trees there for theoretical safety, I guess, or something. I just don't know if the cost of C along Hickman makes sense, but I may not be able to visualize this effectively enough to feel support for it.
I tend to agree with that assessment, and I guess the reason why I'm not as wild about going with staff on C is because it seems to me that we have a sidewalk there, and there, if I understood correctly, is an option to put trees on the, not in the easement between the sidewalk and the street, but on the other side where the property is. And I don't really see the point of putting more pavement in if it's not needed. We need some permeable surfaces, so, yeah.
anybody care to make a motion at this point?
Because I would motion for accepting A1, A2, A3, and B, and so moving staff except for C. I don't know if I've said that correctly or how you say that properly.
So there's a motion, and so you would agree with staff, except for item C, you would approve that request for a design alternative?
Correct.
Correct, okay. Any further discussion on that motion? If not, if you are in agreement, please raise your right hand. And those who oppose, raise your right hand. So, motion carries. All right. Well, that's the last public hearing item. Are there any committee or director reports today?
I do not have anything to add tonight.
Okay, if not, our meeting's adjourned.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday.